Okay, so we have our bowl ready on the scale. I don't personally use a scale to make chapatis. I eyeball it, but this is something that you should use for sure if you're brand new to making bread or chapatis at all. So I'm gonna measure it for you today to make it nice and easy. I'm gonna actually use my eyeballing recipe. All right, so here we are ready to go with measuring out our ingredients. I'm using a Starfrit kitchen scale right now. Once you've made this a few times, I don't think you really need to use a scale because you kind of know what the texture of the dough should feel like. But I'm gonna use it for your guys' benefit today so that it's a little bit easier for you to follow along. So this is my starter, which is ready to go. And so I'm gonna make a big batch of chapatis today. So this is, there we go. So that's exactly 100 grams of sourdough starter. So that's enough for about 16 chapatis, which is what we're gonna make today. I definitely usually only make about 6 or 8 of them every night, but I'm gonna make enough for a few days here. So now we're gonna just add a little bit of water. So I'm gonna zero that out. And so that is 225 grams of water. And so we're gonna zero it out again. We're gonna add some salt. Seven grams of salt. And we are going to whisk that all together nice and smooth. So that is all incorporated. I'm gonna make sure the starter is distributed throughout the bowl. Oh, see, it's sticking. It wasn't quite ready, but that's okay. It's okay, it'll be ready. It'll work, don't worry. The great thing about chapati is that you're not even really supposed to use yeast in it anyways, so even if it doesn't fluff up very much, that's not a big deal. So now we're gonna go ahead and add some flour. So that's to start. I'm gonna grab a little bit more. So that is 350 grams of flour, and that looks like it's enough to me. So I'm gonna move the scale out of the way, and I'm just gonna use my hands to incorporate all this stuff together. There's no need to grab a spoon. You can just use your hands to mush it all together. And there's no real talent to this. It's just a matter of getting the flour nice and wet and incorporating everything together. So this is coming together nicely. And then what we're gonna do is let it sit for a while, which makes it easier to knead. So I usually let it sit for about 60 minutes or so uncovered, and that will help soak up all the water. So this is actually looking a little bit on the wet side, but I'm going to refrain from adding more flour at this point because it's actually better if it's a little bit more on the damp side than it is on the dry side. It makes it a lot easier to handle and roll out in the end. So we're gonna just leave it to auto-lease for an hour. And then if we need to add more flour at that point, we can, because we're gonna have another rise for a few hours while this kind of breaks down and becomes more chewy. So there we go, nice loose dough. Doesn't need to look pretty. All we're doing is gonna let it sit for a little while, and then we're gonna knead it and make it into a ball. So we'll see you again in an hour. All right, so our dough is fully auto-leased, which means that it is hydrated. It's still pretty sticky, so I'm probably gonna have to add a bit more flour to it, because as it stands right now, it is at about 65% moisture, which is pretty high. So we're gonna add a little bit more and maybe get it up to like 50% moisture. So as you can see, there it is, very sticky, sticking to the counter quite a bit. So we're just gonna add a little bit of flour. I have a little bit of flour on standby here, and we are gonna knead it until it is nice and smooth and not sticky anymore. So if you've never kneaded before, the idea is just to keep continuously stretching the dough. So I'm folding it over like that, and then I stick it together. Fold over, stick together. Fold over, stick together. And it might not be sticking right now because you just added the flour. So it's gonna hydrate that flour before it starts sticking. But I just continually folding over, push, fold, push, fold, push, fold. And so we're gonna just keep doing that. And we're gonna do it for quite a while, at least 5 minutes.
Okay, so as you can see,
Okay, so now we got it in the bowl. The bowl is nicely oiled with spray. Just gonna put a little bit on my hand and then rub it over the face of the dough as well. And then I'm gonna grab some saran wrap and I'm gonna tightly wrap it around here. I don't wanna make it too tight because I want it to be able to rise, but I want it to cover it like a second skin. And so we'll wait till that doubles. It'll take about 2 hours for that because we're using natural leaven. Right, so our dough is out of the bowl. It's now doubled in size. And so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut it into 16 even pieces. So the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna cut it in half to start. And then I'm gonna make a rough ball and cut it into 8. So there's 4 pieces, 8 pieces. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and rip those apart because otherwise they just stick back together. They're all broken apart, cut into 16 pieces. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and make them all into balls. So it's the same idea as when you shape a bigger ball by pulling the edges under, except for I'm only using one hand and I'm using my fingers to kind of push the dough underneath. And see, makes a perfect little ball, just like that. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do all these, probably do some fast motion to get through this fast. Okay, so now all of our balls are done. I'm gonna just clear this area here because I've got to roll them out. But before I do that, I'm gonna get my pan ready to go because I really need my pan ready to go right away because as soon as I roll this out, I'm gonna need to throw it right into the pan. So just give me a sec. So I have my rolling pin ready to go and I'm just gonna generously flour the surface here so that we can roll everything out. So start by just gently patting it down with your hand. And honestly, you don't even need a rolling pin. You could just flatten these out with your fingers, stretch them out. You do not in any way need a rolling pin. I use a rolling pin because I want them to be nice and thin. If you were to use your fingers a little bit more, that'd be more of a non-style. So we're just gonna go ahead and gently roll these out. And it doesn't really matter what shape they are. They don't need to look pretty. And right there, that's the perfect size for a chipati. So this is where the kneading came in handy because otherwise this would rip when I take it off the counter. So there we go, nice and thin. And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna go throw that in the pan now. Okay, so now that we've rolled out our chapatis nice and thin, I'm gonna place it into the pan, into a dry pan that's been heated up on high. And so this is gonna cook very, very fast because it's been heating up for so long. This thing is so hot. It's trying to mimic the tandoor oven, which is so hot, like 500, 600 degrees. So we're gonna let that cook up. It's gonna go really, really fast. You'll be amazed. So it's already starting to puff up. Trying to get some good bubble action happening in there. I don't know if you guys can see that. but there's bubbles starting to form. So we're going to try to get some nice charcoal crusting on there, and now it's starting to lift up on this side, so that means it's ready to go over. There we go. Beautiful markings. Just on the verge of burning. That's what we want. Just on the verge. So I like to kind of press it down when I flip it over, because otherwise it puffs up and it's hard to kind of get contact on all sides. It's fundamentally cooked once it's cooked on one side, but right now we're just kind of trying to toast it up a bit. So there you go. So there's the other side now. We're going to go ahead and take that out, and we're going to let it cool down in a stack. And then once it's completely cooled down, we're going to put it into a Ziploc bag, just like that. And it'll stay good, fresh for up to 5 to 7 days. So I encourage you to go ahead and make those. I'm going to go finish making these, and I'm going to store them for the week. Thanks for watching, guys.